All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. Today, Craig and I had a few minutes to chat, and we felt inspired to get on and just do a Craig and Pete powwow chat, which, according to some of the messaging that comes through on the messaging through our website, you guys actually really like some of these. I think it's the banter. Craig, everyone says we have this like slapstick banter back and forth, and I say no. It's just that we make fun of each other ruthlessly, and we're both okay with that.
Yeah, it's just you're ragging on me, and I rag on you.
I was gonna say I think there's some reciprocation with the ragging, by the way.
And sometimes I'll just blindside you, Pete. Just
it's okay.
I just kind of sucker punch you.
I like blindsiding in my life. Sometimes it gets very boring, and I like some surprise. So we wanted to talk a little bit. We were actually just talking offline. I said, hey, let's record this. So I asked Craig, I said, hey, do you have down months? Like, is your summer typically slower? Because that's historically been my issue. I start getting nervous around this time of the year because I definitely see a slump in my practice. And you said, yeah, right? Like you see a little bit of a down slump versus like, my pedo buddies and ortho guys are
and oral surgery
crushing it, right? Like they're gearing up for like massive summer. And I guess that makes a lot of sense, because kids are out of school, right? Parents aren't going to the dentist as much. Kids are out of school, and the parents are focused on the children's care versus them, right?
Of course.
So anyway, we were talking about that being a problem. I said, hey, how are you? Because every spring, I should say, I start prepping my team. Like, look, what we do in March will predict what happens in June, July, and August, right? I always find that there's about a 3-month lag from the efforts that we generate will show themselves 3 months later.
Absolutely.
So I start beating that drum in March, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? Like we've actually had some summer months that have been really aberrantly high, but as a whole, my contention is that summer is slower for a practice like
Pete,
mine.
Let me ask you something, Pete. Have you ever had the highest number in any office be in the highest monthly number ever be in the summer?
I did, yeah.
Really interesting. So it's just
I don't know about the highest, but it was definitely high. It disproved my theory of the woe is me, here comes summer kind of thing. It was this aberrant high month. I think it was last July, believe it or not. I'll have to look in the data. I don't have it offhand, but it disrupted my thought process of that. And who knows, maybe that fear elicited such a great response of me kind of knowing that, oh God, we're going to have a bad summer, we're going to have a bad summer. Preparation is a great motivator, or I should say fear is a great motivator to prepare you. That's so true. I think, so what are you doing? What are you doing to insulate yourself, Craig? From a marketing perspective, from a team perspective, how are you getting your house in order to
offset that? So Florida is even more of an exaggeration because, excuse me, if you have money and you're in South Florida, you typically leave South Florida to get out of this heat and humidity. So the Florida's affluent are only seasonal. They stay here 6 months in a day for federal income tax or state income tax waiver, and then they get out of Dodge come like May, June when it starts the rainy season here. So I think we have a bigger swing. I've always come to think of that. It's hard to make up for that because you have such a drastic swing in the population. Literally, some locations lose half their population. But I want to talk about one thing you said, that when like the summer's coming and you have a bad month and you feel like, oh, this is the beginning of the end. I guess there's two things. There's pain as a motivator, saying like, okay, I got to offset this downturn, and there's also woe is me, the sky is falling, which you can kind of manifest as well. And I'm dabbling between the two, like whether when we have bad months in business, I've talked to other friends who are in business as well. You always think that this is the beginning of the end of a large downward trend. And you'll see cycles happen and that things change over time. But I don't think that it's always heralding the beginning of the end. For us in particular, as you know, Peter, we're going through a particular challenge because I'm losing a doctor or two here at the practice. So, I'm already looking at a slower summer, but now with the transition of doctors, we know how that can be. One of my doctors is moving to Chicago to get married. The other doctor moving to Austin, Texas. I'm not quite sure what he's going to do, but it might not be dental related. So I'm trying to put in a strategy just to stave off any downturn, but had like my eye on the idea that I may wind up having some little bit of a downturn because of that transition. So at this point, from a marketing standpoint, we look to, wisdom teeth are a big part. Oral surgeons, their busiest months are the summer. So from our wisdom tooth section of our practice and our oral surgeon, we're looking at doing a promotion towards the midsummer. Invisalign's huge, so tapping into the ortho market. But the number one indicator of your success, of all the indicators, all the metrics that you have, as Peter and I have learned from Scott Lunam, is your pre-appointment rate. So, we think that the most iconic practice is the dollar per patient or revenue per patient.
And what did he say again? Because I tried to get that from my memory, but when we were listening to his lecture, thinking like he said, if you could only kind of track one thing, almost right? Like it's almost like this is the most important metric there is the reappointment.
Yeah, the pre-appointment rate. So what percentage of your patients are leaving with another appointment in the practice? When you see that into the 90% range, you're going to have an iconic practice, which is so crazy to me. It's not what type of practice you have, fee for service, PPO, the dollar per patient spent. The highest correlated number for profitability and overall size of practice is your pre-appointment rate. So just make sure that when you walk those patients to your front door, that you're not literally and figuratively walking them out of your door to your practice. Because the minute someone leaves without another appointment scheduled, they're ready to be taken over by some other dental practice.
Yep.
That's the number one thing. So you could put in all these great marketing systems and strategies and things in place. But if patients are walking out your front door without the next appointment, you're literally got a hole in your back door, or hole in the front door, as this would be. So that's important to make sure that metric is being looked at.
Yeah, and that is like the lowest hanging fruit, being able to simply appoint, as opposed to, and it's the most cost effective thing, meaning that to reappoint someone after they've left without an appointment takes a lot of people time, meaning they have to get them on the phone and call them, and technology has to remind you to do it, right? Like there's all these hoops you kind of have to jump through to get that person back on if they didn't leave. So it's like the easiest thing to do in the world from a profitability efficiency standard to get them appointed right then and there, right? Regardless of like any oppositions that they bring up sometimes, which are, I don't have my calendar, and
I'll just call you when I'm ready.
Yeah, I'll call you when I'm ready, and I think the more that your team can, I think the more that you can curate the verbiage for your team and even help them brainstorm and just say like, hey, what would you want? It's a convenience for you. Like, look, I know you don't have a calendar, but let's get something down, Mrs. Jones, because these will fill up and then we'll forget, and then you'll be out of your cadence of your cleanings, and like, let's just put you down, and then the software will kind of remind, you'll get text reminders and stuff like that. And typically people are like, okay, cool. Like if you have to cancel, we get it. But like, let's at least kind of put a placeholder down for you.
Another thing, if you have Dental Intel or somewhat similar software, I don't know. Are there competitors to Dental Intel, Pete? I don't even know.
Of course, there's tons.
Yeah, whatever. So if you have a software that tells you this, at least in Dental Intel, you could find out which providers have the highest pre-appointment rate upon exiting the patients and which have the lower. So I don't think you have to get into this whole granular level of trying to figure out how to get your ones that are not up. Just find the one that has like the 98% pre-appointment rate and have them teach the one that has the 70%.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah, you're right. Like don't recreate the wheel and try and let everyone go rogue. Just say, do what this person is doing.
Yeah. If Cindy has a great rate, then find out. Cindy, go talk to Joanne, because Joanne can't pre-appoint for crap. But I mean, that's just a crazy statistic to me. I would have never thought that was the one leading indicator of success. I would have never thought that. I was really surprised to hear that. I was too.
And I like it when things can be we have a tendency with so many moving parts in the practices, marketing and metrics and this and that, and then clinical, and like so many moving parts to a dental practice, right? I love it when you can almost distill it down to like, hey, focus on this and like everything's going to be okay.
It's true.
Like, what? Like it can't be that easy. And it's like, yeah, well, it is. Okay, but we can make it more complicated if you'd like, but now, of course, obviously, other supporting details have to be in place for that to happen, which kind of leads us to our next point of what we were talking about before we hit record. And Craig and I were on the phone with Weston and Rob Bay from Dental Intel, and we were talking about how what were we talking about? Oh, we were talking about the average, how your average
my average
dollar amount per patient per visit has gone up, because you were saying I'm losing some doctors and I feel like things aren't going well. And actually, I think Wes pulled up your numbers and like you've actually increased your number per patient visit revenue. And it was like it was a dramatic number, like dramatic. And so what he was trying to illustrate was giving yourself a pat on the back. And I remember having that conversation with him way back when, and I wrote down some notes. And since that time, Greg, that we were on the phone a couple of weeks ago, maybe, I actually have been forcing my office manager at the end of the day to send me what that magic number is. Average number per patient per year. I mean, average
production per patient per visit.
Per visit. Thank you. Yeah. And and you get what you focus on, right? Like what you track increases. And so I've been watching that increase and, and obviously the revenue. So going back to what we were saying, the more you can distill something down as opposed to focusing on 100 different metrics and 100 different indicators and things that really don't move the needle. I think there's a couple good things that really move the needle. And I was discussing with you, Craig, before we hit record.
Yeah, so there's that Pearson's Law, which we're talking about in our book. Pearson's Law states if you just measure something, it tends to improve. Right. So like studies indicate if you have a scale in your bathroom, just a scale to weigh yourself, even if you're not trying to lose weight, the act of putting a scale in your bathroom will have people tend to lose weight.
Well, it's also the reticulation, right? The what is it? The RAT?
Yeah, the reticular activating systems. Like
you tell your mind what to focus on.
Yeah, you're shopping for a certain type of car, a leadfoot gray Ford Raptor, never seen one before. You order it, all of a sudden, everywhere you go.
Everywhere has Ford Raptors. Yeah, your subconscious goes to work, and I think that's a cool thing. So I've been focusing based on my conversation that I had with Rob years ago, and then kind of being reminded of that on the phone call with all of us the other day. I was reminded that's such a huge thing to track, right? And so I remember him also saying, like, look, focus on these three things and your practice will grow. The number of patient visits, number one, the average production per patient visit, making sure that's going in the right direction. Obviously your overall collections.
Right. And
then your overhead.
That's more than three.
More than what?
That was more than three. Like focus on these three things.
No, that was three.
Okay.
Number of new patients, number of patient visits. I'm sorry, increasing the frequency of patient visits, right? So that's number of patients.
And then average production per visit.
Average production per visit. The collection, and you're right, I was going to say overhead, but if you minus the overhead, that becomes your profit.
Of course,
right? That's your profit.
Yeah. So Starbucks is one of the most successful businesses in the world. Not because their average charge per visit is so high, they have the highest freaking frequency. The average McDonald's customer, I remember learning this like 10 years ago, the average McDonald's customer goes like once every month or once every 6 weeks. The average Starbucks customer goes like 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
It's freaking crazy.
I mean, I go every morning. I mean, I can attest to that. I actually almost feel guilty. Sometimes I go in two times in a day. I'll be like, what's wrong with me? But like, they love me and they keep sending me free drinks because of it.
And they know my name, but they also probably have about $50 of your money that they're holding. You have a Starbucks card, don't you?
100%.
So what other company that I mean, imagine if you owe dentistry, people don't owe you money. You owe like hundreds of thousands of dollars of dentistry. That's what Starbucks has arranged. They owe coffee right now. They have more collected dollars than sales.
Mm-hmm.
because of the
Yeah,
Starbucks card. And there's no float on the money. I mean, you don't get anything except for convenience. Isn't that crazy that people
that is crazy.
Reload my card $25 to $50 at a time? You know?
Yeah. It is crazy. We need to come up with that in dentistry.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, that's what the in-house plans are, I guess. That people are betting like having an in-house plan is like having a gym membership. You're paying no matter what, even if you don't use it.
So going back to what we started.
Do you remember? I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I think it's valuable. Do you remember that we were talking to somebody and they said, "Do you know what this utilization of dental insurance is?" Were you part of that conversation with me?
Mm-mm.
Holy
No.
shit, Peter! It's like 11%. 11% utilization of insurance benefit.
As a global, meaning
global, like of all the people,
or 11 people, only 11% of the people utilize it, or only 11% of what could be fully maximized is fully maximized.
Correct. The latter.
Okay.
Only 11%.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Well, that's why insurance can offer that, right? That's why they have big buildings and have record profitability. Remember that slide of all the
CEOs of freaking
CEOs make?
Holy shit. $100 million salary.
It's crazy, right? And so that's why when you only have 11% utilization. So going back to what we were talking about, if you know you're kind of entering a slow month, or if you're a Game of Thrones fan, winter is coming. If you think winter is coming, even though in our instance it's summer is coming, it's even more important to get your ship tight, right? In terms of the profitability and being lean. If you know you're going to be lean and mean, you really have to kind of batten down the hatches. So are you going to increase your marketing spend? Yes or no? Me
personally, no, I'm not.
No. Okay.
And my whole idea about marketing, as we talked about during our lecture at the Excellence in Dentistry and our upcoming summit, marketing's really, when you and I say marketing, I bet you the people listening are thinking a very different thing than what we're thinking when we say marketing. Because we're talking about marketing, spending more on our patients, influencer marketing, social media, lookalike audiences, stuff like that. But are people hearing like, bus stop or like, Google ad or, or God forbid, heaven forbid, a magazine ad?
Right.
Out of my area, I see a lot of dentists advertising magazine ads.
Right. I agree. And honestly, ironic, it's funny you say that. I got roped into a contract on a magazine ad that I'm desperately trying to get out of right now in my area. And the whole reason I'm desperately trying to get out, because literally I do this experiment where I walk through an airport all the time or just a crowded place, and I just look at what people are looking at. And no one, not even my mother's genre, is looking at magazines or newspapers anymore.
No, I know why.
Everyone has their head in their phone. I know. And so it's a term I call attention-based marketing. You've got to get to where people's eyeballs are, because the more attention you can capture, the higher likelihood that you can convert. And so back to your point, you're right. Maybe marketing means a lot of things to different people. And Greg, honestly though, but in certain areas it works really well. Like in my rural practice, like advertising in the little print newspaper that is, it's not like that works really well, right? Like that brand exposure up there works well for that market, but it's a rural town. It's a smaller, it's a tight knit town, and it's quite different than Atlanta market or a Delray market or something that, people are go.
Well, you got to remember that you're competing against less noise. The statistic used to be that you needed to hear something 7 times before you had a call, before you made an action. Mm-hmm. So that means recency and frequency. So like if you're going to run an ad, you have to run it 7 times in order for people to hear it. And the funny thing is let's say you do a radio ad and you have good frequency. By the time they finally hear you, they like, I just heard you all around town. I think my friend goes to you. They don't even know that they heard it on radio. But what's more interesting is that now it's not 7 times. That statistic, that we're all familiar with 7 times is about 10 or 15 years old. Now it's 20 times because of that noise. I mean, look, everywhere there's a brand. There's Despicable Me stickers on the bananas that I buy for my children. And
I don't think those 20 times were equally weighted though. And hear me out for a second. Like obviously if I see my friend at the dermatologist and it's in their timeline, they're showing a procedure that they just had done, like that counts a lot more than if I had seen that dermatologist's ad on, popping up on my Facebook or Google paid ads or something like that. Right.
Right.
I think you can't just quantify it like, oh, I saw it 20 times. There's the trigger. Like some of them have more power, more clout.
There's influence. The influence
Right.
is the difference now. It used to be there was no influence because the only way to get influence was who has a megaphone, magazines, TV. Now everyone has a freaking megaphone. I mean, if you have 10,000 followers on Instagram or 100,000, heaven forbid, you have a bigger megaphone than than your local news does. It's more relevant. It's more relevant. But I think that to your point of what you're saying, it's a completely different shift. And if we talk about marketing, the traditional context, I think we're doing a disservice to the listeners because we have to qualify what we're talking about. And everybody, and like we've talked about before, the swag that you offer is part of your marketing budget. Like we talk about in the book, Zappos never advertised to the public. Starbucks really never used to, but they did so much they gave so much value. Zappos has a 365-day return policy, which people, by the way, abuse all the freaking time. Women buy dresses from Zappos, wear them 2 or 3 times, and bring them back 365 days later.
But that's only like 11%
of what?
People abusing it. I'm kidding. I'm making another reference.
But still, that cost them a shit ton of money. But what's funny is I was watching Jurassic World last night with the kids because it was raining here in Florida. Have you seen that movie yet? Jurassic World. It's the
new one.
I don't know how new it is. It's probably within a year because it's new.
Yeah, pretty new. The old one is the one like I was a kid. Probably.
Yeah. So it's the sequel to Jurassic Park, and it is crazy the amount of advertising in that movie. All the brand new Mercedes just zoomed in on as they pull up. Everybody's got Starbucks coffee, and I was joking to my wife, like, "Do you notice all the Starbucks cups in the movie?" So there's a guy talking on the phone. He's the main character. And then I'm like, when are they going to pan into the Starbucks shop? And sure enough, they pan right into the Starbucks shop. So it's pervasive, the amount of messaging. So if you want to tap into that, you've got to be very relevant on social, which is, I think, something that Pete and we're not really ready to talk about it at the moment. Pete wants to hold off on it, but we're going to be talking a lot about this at the summit in October because we're doing our own little beta research on this. But influencer marketing, how relevant and huge that is, and how cost effective that is. So by the time Summit rolls around, we have some really good data to show how well it's worked for us. We're pioneering that right now. You want to go into any of that yet, or you want to kind of leave?
Yeah. It's not that it's holding secret and like, oh, come to the meeting and you can get the thoughts. It's just so early. And one of my friends who's runs Implant Compare, Blake McClellan, he was telling me, I tell him some ideas sometimes and I get excited and he's like, bro, you're a little bit ahead of the time, so sometimes I have to he's like, you're a little bit ahead of like, you're thinking like what your idea isn't really ready for mainstream. So I'm trying to kind of,
to the point, Peter, I mean, this is so new that literally last week I called Peter in a conference call with the patient and I'm like, Peter, help me decide if this is influencer marketing or not. I don't even know. Like we're just, I didn't want to make it like a big, like dangling carrot, like show up the summit. But last week was like amongst my first ones of influencer marketing, figuring out how to do it. I had you on speakerphone, like trying to work our way through it. So to your point, it's we just want to find out how it works before we start saying.
And really, there's macro influencers and micro, and really, I think what we're getting data on is more of the micro, because back to what we were saying, just because you have 100,000 followers, sometimes that's in the wrong 100,000 followers, right? And so I'd almost take the right person that has 10,000 or 5,000 and really kind of talk to them. So we're kind of we're all over the place, but you're right. The influencer marketing, because it's a little bit harder, a little bit newer. I think it's the lowest priced attention that you can get.
Yeah, but lowest price per relative, it's really influential.
Of course, but but if you're having to pay, it could be the lowest priced attention that you're gonna buy versus a magazine, versus the Google AdWords, versus even some Facebook and Instagram. Like it's very, very low.
Versus spray and pray.
It's
Yeah.
it's a high ROI and a low acquisition.
By the way, Pete, one of the guys in my office, one of my newest employees, has this program I want to talk to you about where he was dissecting. I had this girl come in; she had like 160,000 followers, and he has this program. I'm not even sure what it is, but we should do the research before we, present about this. And it boiled down to like what followers she's bought, which is crazy. It's this whole algorithm. She only has 60,000 real followers. Are you aware of this program?
I'm not aware of the program, but I am aware that you can buy followers on,
Yeah, so he has this program. I'll email the link to you and show you so you can actually vet we should really talk about that as well, like when we put this together for presentation. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so, I think going full circle, and then we'll wrap, is that marketing is obviously the key, and brand exposure is obviously the key to fortifying yourself against slower months, right? Like, would you agree that if you're going to come into summer, then maybe it's time to kind of ramp up either operations or internal revenue or your marketing budget a little bit, just kind of like prep the ship for the journey across the ocean that is going to be a little bit treacherous. Right. So all of this goes into it, and maybe you're right. Maybe for you, maybe the magic bullet would be some of these influences you're talking about. Maybe for me, it's creating some captivating Facebook ads and really compelling videos, and or maybe it's
I tell you what, the testimonials are so freaking key.
Oh man,
I created this internal promotion in our office. Like, we have a competition going, like who can do the most testimonials. So we released some recently on Facebook. They are so freaking awesome. I mean, anytime one of your patients tells you, or you hear them complimenting you, just say, stop. Is there any way you would be willing to put this on video? That is, you talk about dollar for dollar impact. I don't care how raw it is. Don't worry that you don't have a good video set up. Take your iPhone. Most important thing about your iPhone, though, don't shoot it straight up. Shoot it sideways in landscape format, because that's the difference between 4K and low res. You've all seen those videos. They have the place where you have the sidebars all grayed out. So always keep your phone horizontal.
Yeah, I learned that too recently. Kim actually taught me that like if it's video, turn it sideways. It doesn't matter what you're shooting, what capacity, what format, whatever. If you're shooting video, you're right. Turn it horizontal. That's pretty cool. That's pretty.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that site Tribute, by the way?
No.
So Tribute is a site that I've used. I haven't used it for patients, but I've been invited to give a tribute to someone, whether it's a graduation, and basically you get a link and then it pops up on your phone, you record the message, and then your tribute gets aggregated with all the other people that have sent a tribute to that person, and then it's played at their ceremony or whatever, the party or birthday. But it would be such a cool thing to utilize that in dentistry and be able to like, hey, look, you may not be comfortable in the office and me staring at you, me recording. If I send you this link, could you just make a little tribute or testimonial that, you can do it at home if you want, do it tonight, but like do it in that same emotional time period that someone's still in that chair. Or maybe like, hey, you can do it here, use this link and I'll walk out of the room. Because sometimes people get freaked out when you're the video guy dentist, right? Because it's like, oh, people freak out on camera.
Well, it doesn't have to necessarily be you, but the people that are usually the most effusive with their praise, they want to, like, when someone's happy, they want to tell the world. When someone's pissed, they want to tell the world too. So I just think that, what's the harm in asking, I love the idea, the tribute idea, but I don't want the complexity is the enemy of execution. And there's something that maybe it's not you, maybe it's not the dentist that has to do it. But if there's someone in your office that is gregarious and outgoing and more approachable, let them do it. But start collecting those patient testimonials. There's such gold. They're such gold. The more raw they are, the better they actually perform.
I agree. The authenticity, right? Like people can look through production sometimes, and I think there's a good balance. I like how you say that, because there's a good balance of having some raw stuff on either your website or your social media and some really polished stuff. Yeah. Because I think both of them just legitimize your operation.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but like it just is. Like people love the raw transparency.
They love it. Peter, I did this awesome commercial, by the way. I spent a shit ton of money on it. This was like maybe 7-8 years ago. It's a TV commercial I was running. And I had all my own my real patients show up and talk about their smile. And everybody I bumped into that was in like my space or like was a sophisticated business person's like, man, you spent a ton of money on your talent. Like, what are you talking about talent? He's like, those actors, they were so believable. I was like, well, what do you mean? Those were patients. Like, oh no, those weren't patients. Don't lie to me. I was like, no, they were real patients. But the point being is that the cinematography, the way it was composed, I actually believe in this new era of marketing and influence. It works against you. So it's really cool, I think, and this is just, I'm kind of going off the cuff and you can punch holes all over it, like I know you probably will. But
Yeah.
if you're shooting your facility, yes, that shit should be tight and really, you know, I love the drone shots and all that. When you're shooting people, the more lighting, the more production, the more stuff, I just think it looks a little less believable. I really do.
Okay. I mean, sure, believable, fine. But like, again, a healthy balance is,
Sure.
I think that is with all things, not just people or places. I think a healthy balance. I don't think that you can say, all right, people get no production, but my office, yeah, that gets all the fancy lighting.
Okay,
Right?
I get it. Yeah,
It's
I
a
get
healthy
it.
balance, because it also depends on the context in which you're going to use that video. If it's going to be a website on your front page, top real estate, like it needs to be polished.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, you know. But if it's going to be used in social, like, so there's just different context to the complexity of your production.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I think one
but it's
thing
not a
we can
hard and
both-
fast rule. Don't
One
give
thing we can both agree upon, I know you do this, watermark your shit.
100%. 100%. Well,
Because-
especially your before and after images.
well, you know, it's funny. Appa doesn't. A lot of people don't. Appa
Well, he
never
just doesn't.
watermarks
I
his
mean,
stuff.
he doesn't care. He doesn't
No,
care.
he does. He does. When anybody steals Appa stuff, everybody outs them. You know, like he posted on his story, like, you know, please take your stuff down. So
Yeah, and he has his own, he has his tribe that kind of does the policing for him, I guess. You know, because he has a lot of, obviously, you know, talk about influencers. That's a big dental influencer. He's got a lot of dentists following him that can help police that
yep.
that crime against dentistry.
It is a crime. It's a crime against humanity.
It is horrible. I can't even.
I had someone do that to me. I had a before and after. Check this one out. I had a video. If you Google it, it's a really good video. Just Google Spodak Jeff reaction. But it's a guy getting his all-in-4 for the very first time. I watermarked the corner, Peter, and then someone repurposed it by cropping the video. So it made it smaller. So they watermarked out the corner logo.
It takes a lot of work to like crop a video, right?
It takes a lot of work to make a patient cry.
I guess it's a lot easier than having to go through all the actual work.
Stealing your shit. That's so much easier.
Yeah, right. All right, man. I think I like that. I like, as always, I like where things progress, and sometimes I audit, like when you and I are sitting here talking, I'm auditing, like, what if I was a listener? Like, what would I think these two are wackadoodle crazy with all these tangents that they go off, or is there value that we're creating? But I think everyone can agree that, you know, we have to brainstorm and bounce stuff off each other's. Like, I would encourage everyone else to have someone else needs you know, all listeners out there, I would recommend you all have an advocate, a dental advocate that only wants success for you. If you don't have that person in your life, you know, you need to find them. You want that person to be cheering you from the sidelines, because I know unequivocally that I can call Craig and say, hey, what do you think of this? And I'm going to get legitimate praise or scorn based on, you know, just because you want the best for me. And so I think that's a cool thing to be able to bounce something off someone. So I would encourage you, everyone, whether it's a forum, whether it's Facebook group, whether it's just a personal relationship, to you know, don't silo yourself, you know, in the operation.
And also keep the comments coming too. We've gotten, Pete, you just forwarded me today. We had 2 different people with some really good questions. So, you know, that's what this podcast is about. Pete and I do this, and it's always off the cuff. It's not scripted, and we take no money from anybody, because we have the benefit of bouncing ideas off of each other. And that's what we're doing live here together. And this banter is something that I want everybody to have as well. We were talking about the concept of renting the offices like Airbnb, and some guys like, hey man, I've been thinking about that too. So listen, this is an idea generation.
Yeah, I'm supposed to get on the phone with him. He actually had his business plan and was going for. I mean, he he was like, yeah, I've been working on that for 5 years and you guys just talked about it. So he was wanting to jump on the phone just for some advice. But yeah, I mean, again, that's a super, sometimes crazy ideas that actually work come through crazy brainstorming like we're talking about. But you're right, to your point, keep the ideas coming because this is a super niched podcast, right? Not even a clinical dentistry podcast, but it's just about systems, marketing, leadership, vision. That's a pretty niche. And sometimes you can go into spells of like, okay, well, what else do we need to cover that people actually want to know about?
And you know what, Peter, I just want to mention this for the listeners. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming. Pete and I are working very hard and diligently on some personal development stuff. And that's going to start coming through as well. We got Tony Robbins' son, Jarek Robbins, coming up. We've got a guy by the name of Thor that we're working with that's just a total powerhouse. You got to be a powerhouse. You have a freaking name like Thor, right?
Right. You can't be a candy ass for sure with a name like Thor.
No. Yeah. So we've got some cool, we're taking the podcast in different directions as well. Because we are consuming material that's outside dentistry, and we want to deliver that stuff as well because the most brilliant ideas come from outside of our field. So we're actively looking for those people to jump on our podcast, and I'm excited about what we're coming out with. Also, the book as well. I want to plug the book. I know I always say this. You jump all
the proverbial book that's never getting published.
No, the book is so freaking good, though, Pete. Pete gets mad at me when I say that because I'm just so proud of it.
No, it's just hilarious. Our book is so good if we do say so ourselves.
I know, but it is good, and it's there for. And the best part about it is like when we were talking about we had help, we had the ghostwriter. The ghostwriter is like, "What are you trying to sell with the book?" And Pete and I are like, "Absolutely nothing." He's like, "Oh, well, I've never really written a book that doesn't have a purpose." I'm like, "No, the purpose is to give back." And that's why I love it. So believe me, if we sold to every dentist that's on Amazon, I think it would be a neutral cost event. Because I
was going to say, I still don't even, I think the break even point is about 90,000 books. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but that's why I feel like I can promote it so heavily. It was born of a spirit to give back, and I'm really fired up about that. So, speaking of that, Pete, we should loop back in and then make sure that we're moving fast on that.
Yep.
It's gonna be good.
And back, not to hit the summit up again, but I'm really just inspired by all the registrations that have taken place, even just on a grassroots level. That's another thing that we are doing because, maybe not 100% altruism because we have something to put on. We have to put something on and create a lot of content. But it is super cool in that it's already, we haven't had to market it at all because it's just creating that value and everyone knows it's going to be just literally moving the needle for them after they leave, which is some big boots and shoes for us to fill there, pal. I've already been prepping all the fantastic stuff I want to bring because I want to make sure that it is truly delivering all this hype we do, which it will. It's going to be fun. Just even getting in that mastermind situation, like a micro of what you and I do on a macro level.
Yeah, every day. Like that's what you and I like. That's the beautiful thing. I've gone to so many lectures recently where it's literally a presentation that gets you to sign up for something else. We're leaving it all on the freaking table. Like every secret we know, like everything we know. So, I even had one of my local people here says, "Hey, do you mind if I go?" That girl that just signed up, I'm like, absolutely not. Go for it. That'd be great. I want a rising tide floats all ships. I want our profession to do well, and I want to give it all, like everything. So all the emails that we get when they want to pick our brain, just go there. Everything will be on the table at that summit. So I'm excited about that.
Yep. Well, that's good, buddy. I enjoyed it. Let's wrap it. And let's look forward to the next guest, and we'll chat later.
Yes, sir. Take care, everybody.
All right, everyone. As always, thanks for tuning in and spending your time with us. We hope we delivered value, and we will talk to you soon. Peace out.